Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star, here with you. Of course, I don't think I've ever released the video for when we do the Star Wars update. But if you did have the video, you would see a very different look at the BDSM studios. Because right now I'm having, I have like 3 or 4 cameras, and every one of them was failing except for the one that's built right into my laptop. So at least I have it. And the reason I actually like to have camera and do video with this, well, first off, is that, I use Google Hangouts actually to allow this to happen. But it's because I like to have as best as possible face-to-face conversation. And this is just one of my favorite times of the month. I say it all the time because I get to have a face-to-face conversation with one of my favorite people on the planet. And that, of course, is Robin Freebeard. Robin, man, welcome back to Star Wars Update. Here we go.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, man. And, never a quiet month with Star Wars. It's pretty remarkable that it is it's its own universe, of course, but it really is its own universe. And there's always something to talk about. It's really amazing.
This is one of the things I love about it. I mean, we always have stuff to talk about. Even if we didn't have stuff Star Wars talk, I'm sure you and I would have a great time. But it's great that we always have Star Wars stuff to talk about.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Maybe at some point we could do a Star Trek update together.
That would be awesome. I would love that so much.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I have like a really tight schedule throughout August, so it wouldn't be able to happen this month, but maybe in a future month, because sometimes I like to have Stephanie and Ellen do it with us, or do it with me. But maybe we could do all 4. I don't know. However it could work.
Yeah, I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek almost as much as I love Star Wars. So I'm game.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. So anyway, yeah, we got a lot to talk about this week. And of course, maybe one of the biggest things, we're not going to open up with it, but maybe one of the biggest things to talk about that we've been teasing really for months, because we've known about it for months, of course, is the new Thrawn book, that being Thrawn Alliances. We will be getting into that review. We're going to review some comic books. And there's some interesting news to come out about some of the solo films. And I don't mean solo as in Han Solo. I mean kind of the standalones that aren't episodic within Star Wars. And then we got a great question of the month and some great fan picks and everything, and we're going to get into all of that throughout the Star Wars update. And then maybe, I'm all right. I'm going to start off with this question. I'm going to start off. I sometimes like to do it at the beginning, sometimes like to do it at the end. Robin, how are you feeling about Star Wars this month? Like, are you feeling, how's the state of the union for Star Wars? What do you say?
We're kind of like it's like a calm before the storm sort of feeling, there's not a whole lot going on. There's certainly lots of things coming down the pipeline. There's certainly plenty to be excited about.
Sure.
But I'm kind of feeling low energy Star Wars right now.
Low energy. Okay.
Yeah. So,
are you feeling like kind of like positives coming, or do you feel negatives coming?
Oh no, I think positive stuff is coming.
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of people think there's negative stuff coming down the road, and we'll certainly talk about that. But I think we've got some good stuff coming up, especially headed towards television.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly episode 9 news is starting to hit pretty hard and heavy.
Yep.
We had that interesting picture of the Millennium Falcon on some forest planet. Some people are saying it's Batu, which we might get into talking about that a little later. Other people are saying it could be Kashyyyk, could be Endor, or the moon of Endor, not actually Endor, right? And so on, and who knows. But anyway, the news is starting to come in. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'll just put it that way. I don't have a bad feeling about this. Okay, as far as Star Wars goes, I'm feeling pretty good about everything coming down the pike. And well, again, we'll talk about some of the stuff that might not be coming down the pike anymore a little bit later.
Right.
But hopefully that gives the tone for the rest of this episode that, we're feeling pretty good. Yeah. Low energy. I like the way you described that. I think that works. Something that was, I think, pretty exciting for a lot of people. Of course, last month during the Star Wars update, we talked about the return of the Clone Wars, and the trailer that came out for that was exciting as fucking hell. Just absolutely remarkable to see that. But we got a trailer dropped in August. And that trailer is for the new show coming out in October, that being Star Wars Resistance. And this is a show. First off, if you want to watch the trailer, it's about a 1.5-minute trailer, so it's a fairly full trailer. But you can check that out. The link is for it in the show notes. And it's coming out in October, and it seems pretty. Now they've released some official information about it. that it's taking place 6 months before The Force Awakens. Like Oscar Isaac's in it. I mean, this is when you watch the trailer, you get to see all of that. You see Oscar Isaac, you see the new characters, BB-8's there, and some other familiar faces. And we found out some other things recently. But first off, I guess I want to ask you, Robin. I mean, how did you feel about this trailer when it hit? Like, what was your reaction?
I'm still pretty excited about it. It's still kind of like they didn't answer all my questions yet. I'm still kind of wondering the whole setting of this. It seems like some sort of like pilot proving ground or something like that. I haven't quite figured that out. I'd like to know more about, what that is. I know that the main character is kind of like operating as an undercover spy,
right,
to find maybe a double agent or something like that. But I like the
or something like that.
I'll be the first to admit, like the cell shaded animation style, it takes me a little bit of time to warm up to that. It's not my favorite,
right?
Just because I know that the production values on that actually tend to be pretty low.
Sure,
but that's a cost saving thing, so I can understand that. But I like the aesthetic of it. I like the different like ship designs we're seeing in there. Those are really interesting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you about the cell shaded animation. I mean, I think it looked gorgeous. Like when I first saw it, I was like, wow, this is very pretty.
Right. I know some people really love that a lot, and I'm not dissing it at all because,
sure,
there's been some other shows in the past that have used that. And like I said, it took me a little bit of time to warm up at it, but they turned out to be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally, like when I watched it, I admittedly, there's the point where a guy gets, because it's on this water world. We don't know the name of the water world yet, but it's on what is effectively like an aircraft carrier. Okay, it's a pretty good bet. We're not talking about Moncal, but like
to me, it looked more like an oil platform or something like that. It was a stationary structure.
Oh, maybe it is the Colossus. Yeah, or a massive refueling platform, right? It is a platform.
Yeah,
okay, so it's not an aircraft carrier,
right?
But it's called the Colossus anyway, and so. Like there's the point where the guy gets like tossed off of the Colossus and the character Kaz, who is the main kind of the main hero here, says to Poe Dameron, voiced by Oscar Isaac, it's like, whoa, what just happened there? And he says, don't ask about it, and like there was points where I was laughing during this, like it was genuinely funny, and I was very, very pleased with that. To get that kind of rise out of me watching this trailer boded well, in my opinion, for what we're going to be getting in early October. And we do know, we have some details now as far as like what the first episode, I think the first episode's called The Recruit. It's a 1-hour premiere that's going to be happening. And it is kind of a spy. He's like going undercover and trying to unearth various things. I'm sure he's trying to figure out shit with the First Order and who knows what else.
Right.
One of the more interesting details to come out is that, because they're giving details about the voice cast for the show, is that we are going to get General Organa. We're gonna get General Leia in this, and that's going to be, I think that's really solid to have her character be a part of it. And well, I mean, that got me excited as well. To have her be a part of all of this.
Right.
So I mean, what are your thoughts on the show overall, like going into it? What are you thinking?
I still haven't like completely made up my mind. I know, I mean, this is the Disney's marketing machine is in full gear here, and it doesn't really seems like they've changed tactics much with their marketing that they've done in the past. I know there's been some backlash online about, oh, this is another kid show. And thankfully, most people have been pointing out now, the sort of trend with both the Clone Wars and Rebels, where, Disney starts this show and markets it towards, that age demographic, and then it evolves into something so much more. And I don't think they're going to break that trend with this.
Right. They let the show actually in real time grow up with the original audience.
Right.
Which I think is, not an unfair thing to do, and that's why they have to come out with a new show every 5 years, because they got a new generation they got to appeal to.
So when people see what looks definitely more like a kid's show, I'm not bothered by that. And I think people should have like learned by now, this is Disney marketing. This is what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, an important thing to bring up too is that, as good as the trailer can be, I mean, Disney can make amazing trailers and then, but
Yeah, yeah.
that happens.
Right.
But again, I like a lot of what's happening with it. I like the fact that Phasma is going to be in it. I actually think
Yes.
with Gwendolyn Christie doing the voicing and everything, that there needs to be a lot more of that. I think that explaining the resistance more is an important thing to do, so I have no problem with that. The one thing that's interesting, and I want to ask you how you feel about this, I think they're going to steer clear of it, is I think a lot of people were hoping with this show that we would get some kind of resolution with, say, Ezra Thrawn or with Sabine and Ahsoka. I'm feeling like those characters aren't going to show up at all. Like they're, in fact, I don't know if I even want to see Thrawn in cell shading.
I think that kind of leads into our next topic, really.
Sure. Yeah.
Because there was an article put out by comicbook.com where they did an interview with Dave Filoni. And it turns out, and I didn't even know this, was that, Dave Filoni obviously developed the show, and he was, the showrunner behind the Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right.
He developed the show, but he's kind of handed it off, and he's not involved in the day-to-day operation of Resistance.
Yeah, which this was interesting. You shared this with me, and I read it, and I was like, oh, I mean, because Filoni was very hands-on with Rebels and with Clone Wars, and he even says in the article, and of course, all links are in the show notes, folks. He even says in the article that, like with some of his special characters, like Sabine or Ahsoka, he has to be really hands-on with those. Like,
because they control. Yeah, they asked him point blank whether or not they were going to continue those stories, and he was like, "It would be really hard for me to let creative control of those characters go to somebody else to fully take the reins on."
Sure. So you're saying you think that that's pointing at the fact that those characters are not going to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And that was, and I'll be the first to admit that was going to be my expectation too. I didn't think that, my expectation was it was going to be sort of like Rebels where, we didn't see Ahsoka for the first year and then she shows up on the season finale. I thought something similar might happen, but now at this point, I don't expect to see any of those characters from the previous shows show up at all in the show.
Yeah. Which, I mean, and I agree. Like, I'm at the point where I don't think it's going to happen. I also thought that it would have been like, it just seemed the timeline fit. Everything would seem to come together to where it could happen.
Right.
And it's nothing against the show. I think Resistance is going to do fine. I think it, even if Filoni is a little hands off, I still think as long as he's steering the ship in some way, I feel confident about it.
Yeah, well, he's the I guess I forget the exact title, but he's basically in charge of all animation.
Yeah, he's like creative director of animation or something.
Yeah, exactly. Which is cool. So I mean, I don't think obviously he's in a position where he's not going to let it, stray off the tracks and go totally, crazy. And but I think it's really nice that he's giving other talented people the opportunity that George gave him, when they started the Clone Wars, because that's sort of the position that George Lucas and Filoni started out with, where George Lucas was, the mentor and Filoni was learning under him.
Yeah, which I think that was interesting because that is in that article as well, where Filoni is saying that. He's like, well, I kind of have George's position right now. In a way, that's what he was really saying. And I mean, I couldn't be more than happy about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, I don't want to read too much into that, but I mean, if he's got a really much broader brush to work with whatever comes out of his mind, I mean, obviously I feel very confident about Star Wars then as well. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? I mean, and this is kind of the question posed in the article. I mean, so everybody's wondering, so what the hell is he working on?
Right.
I mean, do you have any idea? Any thoughts? I mean, I can think of a million things I'm hoping he's working on, but
exactly. I mean, I'm sure we're both hoping that he's working on, a Ahsoka and Sabine, sort of centered animated series, which I think would be great. But whether or not he does that or not, I don't know. That would obviously be the easy answer. But Filoni kind of strikes me as the guy not to do the obvious thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the hell else he could be working on. But I mean, they, Disney's shocked me pretty much every time, and not always to the good on what exactly they want to do.
Right.
So I think even guessing, might be a fool's errand as far as what he.
The other thing I'd put out there is we both know that Filoni loves the expanded universe from the old, Legends, what they call Legends. I think people, myself included, would be absolutely thrilled if he decided to do some sort of Old Republic, story.
Yeah.
Because everything we're hearing about is that these projects that Disney's working on film wise aren't touching that material. Yeah. So that leaves it open to somebody else to sweep in and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and while they're experimenting with other forms of animation, look, if they want to do something Old Republic and make it look like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like, please,
oh yeah,
like let's have that gorgeous style, and I think you could really make because that kind of art lends itself to a very epic feel, and I more so even than I think CGI, and certainly more so than cell shaded animation. So I would really love to see something like that. I agree that's an interesting point to bring up. That's what he could be working on. Let me ask you this though, because while we're talking about things and our confidence in Filoni and how much he loves the EU, what would you, how would you feel if he announced, like, yeah, so I'm doing this animated show between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, not Resistance, and I'm bringing in the Yuuzhan Vong.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew it. God, yeah.
It's it is like so many Star Wars fans are just like, no, never ever do that again. What do you think? Like, seriously,
I'll admit I'm one of those people. I was not a fan of the new Jedi Order. That's kind of when I dropped out of Star Wars for a good while. But
sure,
you know what? The thing is that he's so capable of telling such great stories that I would just have to, put my faith in his ability to deliver that and just accept it and move on. And I would definitely watch it. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I would watch it too. I mean, I think, I get the concerns around it and some of the more serious concerns around the Yuuzhan Vong, because a lot of people feel that it was just they were analogous to Muslims. And that they were actually a way of kind of.
Oh, really? See, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, because I
always thought it was Star Wars trying to copy Star Trek, and that the Yuuzhan Vong was like the Star Wars version of the Borg.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's elements of that. Like, you needed to create like this really evil grand evil, but like the way and I get it, because I mean, I read the entirety of the new Jedi Order. Amazingly, I stuck through it. And even all the two-parters and the short stories is horrible. But, but I get their point, like kind of the religious zealotry of the Yuuzhan Vong and all that. Like, I do see where people think that's what was being pointed at. I don't know that anybody was actually trying to be like anti-Muslim at Del Rey or whatever.
That came out before the, that was a strong comment, because the new Jedi Order started, 99?
Yeah, or 2000.
So that was before 9/11. Right. So, it's kind of hard to read that sort of thing into it, that, post facto.
Yeah, I think maybe some people would say it was done after that. I mean, I don't know, but regardless of that,
I think
Filoni would make sure it wasn't disrespectful, in that
of
way.
Course. Yeah.
So, well, anyway, just a fun little.
I knew you were going to do that. As soon as you started talking about it, I'm like, he's going to say the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yeah, I mean, like, you just got it. All right, what's the worst thing that we could possibly hand Filoni?
And you're not totally off base on that, because when I was at Celebration back, I think it was in 2012, and they were showing concept art for unproduced episodes of the Clone Wars. They showed concept art with the Yuuzhan Vong in it, and he was going to have a storyline where a scouting party from the Yuuzhan Vong, like Anakin and Obi-Wan, were going to encounter them.
We were that close.
Yeah.
Those could have been canon.
Right. Well, they did the same thing with Revan too. They showed concept art of Revan and Darth Bane in there too. So
yeah. And Mark Hamill was supposed to voice Bane, right?
Well, he did, because the Lost episodes. They did the one episode with Yoda where he went to Moorband.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So yeah, well, anyway, Resistance, I'm feeling hopeful about it. I think it looks like it'll be fun, and it'll
Yeah.
probably morph into something that nobody's expecting, and so I think it'll turn out great.
Right.
Even if Filoni isn't hands-on, I'm still feeling good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think he's a competent judge of talent too. So, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, why don't we get into our book review for this month? And this is one of the biggies. I mean, certainly one of the biggest announcements, because last year it was a huge deal. And of course, talking about something that Filoni handled beautifully, at least in my opinion, from the old EU, was the character of Grand Admiral Thrawn, or Mithran Wandu. And Thrawn, so the book Thrawn that came out by Timothy Zahn, I want to say that was like last April, is still at the top of my list as far as like favorite books done within the new canon of Star Wars ever since Disney bought it out. And this year we got kind of a sequel, which actually takes place directly after the season 3 finale of Rebels, where Thrawn is defeated by the Bendu. Yeah. and you're kind of dealing with the fallout of that Thrawn has had a failure on his hands with this book. And it's a book that takes place in 2 different timelines. And it's also, again, written by Timothy Zahn. But it takes place during the actual Clone Wars, where Thrawn has interactions with Anakin and Padme Amidala, I did not know that Padme would be in the book. It was a very welcome addition, in my opinion. And then also there's another point where, again, it goes back to right after Rebels season 3, where you have a mission that Vader and Thrawn are engaging in. And so I guess I want to ask first, Robin, like overall, what did you think of the book? I mean, like, I don't know, maybe we do 1 out of 10, 10 being great, 1 being the Black Fleet Crisis. And, I mean, where would you rank this maybe?
This is a good 8.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like that. I'd give it that too. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did you feel about this book? You'll go ahead and share your thoughts on it.
I really liked the dual time period thing. And like yourself, Padme was a welcome addition. I wasn't expecting her to be in the book too. So the fact that, they even opened up in the early chapters with her perspective was really cool.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it was really, really awesome to have her in this book. Like that was just such a shock, and I was like, "Oh, fuck yes!"
And I did to choose to do the audio book version this time,
read by Mark Thompson.
Yeah, who normally I'm not a big fan of, but his tendency to sort of hand things up was a little bit more restrained this time, so I was able to enjoy it.
Sure. Yeah, no, I did it as audiobook as well, and I was pleased with Mark Thompson's performance. He does a great Thrawn. Like, I mean,
well,
it sounds good.
As I understood it, he did it with Timothy Zahn, and I don't know which parts Timothy Zahn was doing, but apparently he's in there too.
Oh, wow! I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
So yeah, but whichever 2 of them did Thrawn did a great job of emulating. Who is it that does Thrawn in Rebels?
It's Mickelson's brother there.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I knew it was his brother. I just can't remember his first name at the moment, but
it's like Lars, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is Lars.
Mikkelsen.
Yeah, Lars. Yeah, but they did a great job of emulating his voice perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, it was just as good in the first Thrawn audiobook. I mean, like Thrawn's voice acting.
Yeah,
it was just as good then.
And it's kind of one of the funny things they do in the book is they really emphasize how to pronounce Thrawn's Chiss name, Mithran Nurodo.
I was laughing my ass off because there's a point in the book, yes, where Anakin and Thrawn are first meeting each other, and like they're going back and forth on how to pronounce it. And Anakin, it sounds like Anakin's saying it perfectly, but then Thrawn's just like, no, it's Mithran Wandu. They just go back and forth for like 5 minutes.
And Anakin's being so cocksure of himself, and Thrawn just keeps correcting him, and Anakin just keeps getting more annoyed. He's like, fine, whatever, Thrawn.
Right. Yeah, it was hilarious. So I mean, I'll tell you, as far for me, I agree with you on the 8. I thought that this book, and you can share more of your thoughts on it here as well. But I thought that the book, I really enjoyed it. I don't, let me ask you this. Which timeline did you like more? Did you like the Vader and Thrawn or the Anakin and Thrawn?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. I really enjoyed, because like the Anakin performance seemed more like it leaned on the Clone Wars depiction of Anakin than the movie's depiction of Anakin, and I really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to go with the Clone Wars era.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's really close.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I agree with the Clone Wars depiction because I thought everybody was depicted so well in that.
Right.
I felt like Vader was a little less badass than he should have been.
This is my problem with my biggest problem with the whole book.
Aha. Okay. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So, the whole frenemies thing between Thrawn and Vader, and how, Thrawn continually, stokes Vader's anger, whether on purpose or not. And there's just only so many times where, Vader's saber trigger can get itchy that you stop taking it seriously.
Yeah. Like, and there's, I don't know, it just felt like Thrawn was having conversations with Vader that the Vader that I feel I know would just never put up with. Like, I mean, he would have been force choked in 2 seconds. Like,
right. And he even goes in with the internal dialogue about how, Vader was saying to himself, basically, if it was anybody else, this guy would be dead already.
Right.
And I'm like I said, the fact that there were so many incidents where that happened, it kind of, the effect wore off. Right. I think they maybe should have done that maybe 2 times at the most, but they did it quite a bit.
Yeah. Now we'll get into, I mean, I don't, spoiler alerts, folks. I mean, we're going to talk about what happens in the book. Because I mean, there's some pretty big, I feel like there are 2 or 3 pretty big reveals in this. One of them being is that Thrawn absolutely knows who Darth Vader is. He knows that that's Anakin Skywalker. And one could argue that like there was an underlying tension that Vader had throughout that entire time because he's not used to somebody knowing exactly who he is. And they kind of hint at that, and that maybe that leveled out some of Vader's badassery because he was kind of thrown off of his game, as it were. But I don't know, that part was a tough sell.
I agree with you. Actually, this coincides with one of the things I really liked the most, and why it's such a tough call for me to call between the the Empire era and the Clone Wars era of the story is that I really appreciated the Vader internal dialogue and how he talked about the Jedi.
Yeah, right.
That was really cool, because there's only been a couple other times, I think, like in the Vader comic book, where they've sort of shown that internal dialogue between Vader and Anakin, where he does kind of reside as sort of an alternate personality inside him. And getting to see or hear more of that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. Though, flip side of that, one of the things that keeps this book from being a 10 for me is there's a couple things, but one of them was I miss from the first book where you get this like Art of War monologue from Thrawn. That's not present. I know some people didn't like that from the first book, but that's not present in this. And I mean, you still get you get internal monologue from him. Yeah. But you don't get that, like the lessons that he keeps teaching, like he kept teaching throughout the first book. And I missed that. I was like, oh, I would have loved to have had that.
I think he did do a little bit of that, but you're right. It was definitely toned down. And one of the other things I didn't like about it from Thrawn is he does a lot of this, hyper intensive, analyzing people and their movements and things that they're saying. And he doesn't really sort of give a whole lot of conclusion is what he's gaining from those observations. But, it's something he does quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, kind of as a whole, I feel like this book was, this really felt that, well, there's one, I'm going to bring up one other negative here in a second, but as a whole, I felt like this was in the style of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This was very much a Holmesian tale, like on both ends of the stick, like that, Clone Wars and Rebels.
Absolutely.
Like it really, really felt like a lot of the noticing. I mean, the way it was written, everything about it really felt like just Sherlock Holmes, which I mean, I've said before, and I'm not the only one, that really Thrawn's appeal is that he's Sherlock Holmes in space,
right.
Working for the Empire. And I think Zahn pulled it off. And that seemed to be what he was really, really shooting for with this.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I don't think that was an accident at all. I think that's intentionally what he was shooting for.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, I mean, maybe he got a lot of negative reaction or criticism or whatever from, because like I said, in the first book is very much Art of War, where at the beginning of each chapter, you get this like whole, like separate, completely separate, almost captain's log, as it were, from Thrawn that I love that. I thought that was so cool. But Zahn went with a different writing style in this one. So if you didn't like the writing style of the original Thrawn book from last year, Thrawn Alliances might be more your speed. Now, I do want to get into another negative, and this is kind of my only really big negative, and that is this really you don't, unless you think about it this way, I don't think you exactly notice it. So it's tough for it to be a negative. You really got to be thinking about it this way. This whole thing takes place the both timelines center around Batu. Okay, like this planet Batu, or at least
And we've talked about that before.
Right. So now Batu is going to be the planet that is getting simulated, shall we say, or replicated at Disney World and Disney.
Right.
Or for their Star Wars, you're supposed to you go there and it's like you're going to be in Star Wars.
Yeah, the Edge of the Galaxy playland or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, right. The Edge of the Galaxy Park or whatever that you're going to. So this felt a whole hell of a lot, because they keep going to this tavern, and they're getting like effectively a turkey leg to eat there and everything. Like this felt like a advertisement. When you think about it, when you put that under perspective, it really kind of felt like an advertisement for that whole park.
Yeah.
And that was a little annoying to me, but you don't really notice it unless you recognize. But the thing is, Disney made such a big deal that, this planet is going to be the planet that you're going to be able to actually go to. And so this book really did come off, in certain ways as like just an advertisement for Disney World. And I'm like, that feels ugly.
Yeah.
And they kind of, they schlepped out Zahn for that.
Right. So, I mean, I was expecting that to agree, so maybe it didn't bother me as much.
Okay.
So, maybe people are listening to this and haven't, read or listened to the book yet, will, benefit from knowing that, because I fully expected that going into it.
Sure.
Because it's totally, it seems ridiculous for Disney to pass up on an opportunity like that.
Yeah, I thought, when they were talking about it before, that the two would like have this kind of connection, I thought they just like mentioned the planet or some shit, but it ended up like being a huge part of it, which I guess in one sense is a good thing, because they're connecting all of this different stuff that we were told would get connected. But at the same time, it did kind of feel like it felt a little salesy.
Yeah. Well, I think they're laying some groundwork with this book too.
Sure. So
there'll be things that maybe you'll encounter at the park that will tie into that book in one way or another, and that they're kind of, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of narrative to the experience, and this will tie into that somehow.
Yeah, and I think it's going to make bigger sense, because one of the reveals of one of the big three, in my opinion, or more or less three reveals in this book, is that there is another species out there that is a threat to the Empire, and that's exactly what Thrawn and Vader are dealing with. And they're from the unknown regions, which we've been constantly getting hints that Palpatine was worried about these terrible threats from the unknown regions that could come in. And so the species, I mean, maybe this is going to be kind of the villain character that you're going to deal with when you go to this Disney World park of Batu. And because that's obviously something that's going to happen after episode 9. And I think it would only make sense that the park that you go to takes place after what, I think many people are hoping to be the biggest Star Wars movie of all time. Not to say that it's actually going to be that, but, so, I mean, so that was interesting to get that. But I think that's going to play into things as well, is that the species, that they're taking on, will be a major part of the Star Wars canon, in general, going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to be that species. I mean, this would be one of the things. It's not so much of a huge criticism of the book, but I didn't feel like that. What were they called? The
began with an H. It's
yeah. I thought it started with a G.
Well, maybe it was with a G. That's what I get for reading the audiobook.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Yeah. And I remember looking up the spelling. It was spelled totally different than the way it sounds.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it could end up being something else.
Yeah, I think it. Well, I mean, do we want to spoil the ending of the book? But I mean, that's kind of like it's really telling. The way the book ends really tells about how seriously you should take these aliens.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and spoil it. So this species, I mean, ends up getting its asses handed to it by Thrawn and Vader. Right. So you're saying like that you think this means they're pretty much not a threat.
No, not so much that they're not a threat as they're not the real threat. I mean, the conversation between Thrawn and Vader at the end seemed to heavily imply that the species may have just been a proxy pawn of the Chiss ascendancy.
Aha. Okay. Yeah, sure. So, well, let me ask you that. I mean, do you think this is what it's going to come down to? First Order versus the Chiss, or
I would not complain.
No, I wouldn't either. Because I'm with you. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that we end up learning about in this is like, okay, what about Chiss Force users? In fact, there was, I'll tell you, this is something, it's okay. So like, I don't want to say that it took anything away from the book, but I was a little disappointed because there's a point where Vader is theorizing what these like Chiss Force users are all about, that they end up like rescuing, and these children. Now we find out that what they are is the Chiss use them to navigate the unknown regions because the way that part of the galaxy developed makes it very difficult to navigate. Which finally gives us an answer as to why the hell aren't people going into the unknown regions? I mean, do you think it'd be an exciting place? But anyway, like there's a point where he's theorizing. He's like, did the Sith all be, go to the Chiss or something like that? And it doesn't, I mean, I still wonder if there's some truth to this because Thrawn knows what the Sith are. And he even claims, and I loved it when he says it. He says, "Oh yeah, he's like, the Jedi we hear are, they're like nothing impressive." He said, "But the Sith, they were great warriors, great tacticians, and all this stuff." And I thought that was so cool when he said that. I was like, "Oh man," And so I don't know. And then you have, like I said, later on, you have Vader thinking that the Sith, maybe they were part of the Chiss or something. It could get pretty wild, if they played off of any of that. In the book, even though again we do find out what the Chiss Force users are used for and that they have various limitations and they're basically just navigational computers.
Yeah, so there was something really interesting that happened on Twitter yesterday. One of the cast members of Episode 9, one of the new cast members, Richard E. Grant, tweeted something, and the quote was, "You're playing who in Star Wars?" And he posted this picture of a shocked face with really wide eyes. And, and if you look at him, what Richard E. Grant looks like, he's got this really huge forehead.
Yeah. Okay. So are you saying he's going to be playing Thrawn?
I don't know. That's what a lot of people are thinking.
Well, I think today, like there was the news that he said, "I can't tell you what character I am, but I'm not going to be Thrawn."
Okay.
Yeah. So apparently, because I think a lot of people picked up what you were putting, or what was being put down, and what you saw there. But so the claim is he came right out and said, "No, I'm not Thrawn." But here's the thing with J.J. Abrams, I don't believe jack shit.
Right.
I mean, ever since Star Trek Into Darkness with Khan, he's like, "Oh no, he's not Khan." Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't believe a single word that anything JJ's involved with. I mean, during production, I don't believe anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something I'm willing to put money on, but it is an interesting, he
looked good. I mean, like you look at Richard E. Grant, you go, "Oh yeah, he could be Thrawn all right."
Right. Exactly. Say you look at that big forehead of his and that jaw, and you could see it. Yeah.
It's really something. And I mean, I would love it if it happened, but I don't know. Well, we'll see. But that was interesting, certainly to learn more about the Chiss within this book and how all of that worked. That was pretty wild. I guess that more or less covers like the three major reveals I felt were that Thrawn knows that Vader was Anakin Skywalker.
Which that follows because they kind of hinted that Tarkin was figuring that out. He wasn't sure. And
yes,
so
in the Tarkin book.
Yeah. So you would imagine like the guy who's like the one guy who's smarter than Tarkin probably figured it out.
Yeah, exactly. But what kills me? How did Admiral Yularen never figure this shit out? Like that's a guy that should have put the pieces together,
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. Admiral Yularen always kind of struck me as just more of an obedient follower. He wasn't really that smart of a guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I mean, I guess it's because like he's like head of the ISB or whatever later.
Yeah,
on,
yeah, and then again, he also strikes me as a character that kind of plays things close to the chest.
Yeah.
So if he did know something like that, he would never let it go that he knows.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a great point. Yeah. So that was another major reveal. And then I think the other major reveal of the three was, like how the Chiss kind of use the Force and certain theories that might exist around that.
Yeah. So do you think Thrawn was telling the truth when he says that the ability fades in children?
I mean, there's a chance that he's not.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there seems to be oddities in how it expresses itself. Like they said, mainly it was in female children, and there are males, but it's very rare. I mean, I'm still, like I say, personally, I think it was too nuts of a theory for Timothy Zahn to write, for Vader to think that, holy shit, the Sith are like they ran off to the Chiss, and they're with, or maybe the original Sith are the Chiss or something. I mean, we are in the new canon now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like those creatures on Yavin 4, that end up actually being the original Sith.
See, I'm thinking this is something that Thrawn told the Emperor and Vader, because if he told them that the Chiss do have, Force ability and they're able to retain it into adulthood, Palpatine probably would have accelerated any plans he had to invade the unknown regions, because that's a major threat to him.
That is a fair point to bring up. Well said. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. So, overall, I guess to get into it, I mean, I thought it was a very good book. It's not as good as the first Thrawn book for me.
No,
it's not going to sit. It probably wouldn't even sit in my top 5 or maybe even my top 10.
Yeah, me either.
Very much. What would you say to that?
Your audio just cut out for a sec.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Am I back?
Yeah. No, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Oh yeah, no. Well, just that. I mean, what would you say to that? That where would this book like rank with you? As far as, I mean, would it be in your top 10 at all?
No, it's not my top 10. I probably somewhere around the same as you. It's certainly nowhere near as good as the first one. It's nowhere near as good as Lost Stars.
Yeah, right.
I don't even think it's as good as Tarkin.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. On that. Absolutely.
I would put it below Tarkin.
Yeah.
Tarkin is kind of like on the last half of my top 10.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. So, but a worthy read. I don't think that it's it's not one I would miss.
No, this is still like, I would still consider it required reading if like you're a hardcore Star Wars fan.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, did you have any further thoughts on that? Otherwise, we're going to get into something that isn't required reading at all.
No, I think that pretty much covered everything I had to say about it.
Cool. Yeah. I like the book quite a bit. So, okay. Let's go into something that that everybody in the world could just fucking skip. Like this in fact, I'm gonna steal Robin's joke here. This is the comic that nobody wanted, or that nobody asked for, from the movie that nobody asked for. And of course, that's reference to a couple Star Wars updates ago when we talked about the novel coming out that nobody gave. Even though I've read the excerpts from the book, which the solo novel, which is coming out in early September, and some of the stuff that happened in it, or in the book that's going to be in the expanded edition of the solo novel, was actually pretty cool. It's like, oh, well, that sounds all right.
This seemed like an advertisement for that, if anything.
Yeah. Well said. Good point. Disney seems to be doing that a lot. We're talking about it here. So, but what this is a one shot that came out in August, just actually like last week, and it's Star Wars Beckett, and of course it has to do with the character of Tobias Beckett from Solo: A Star Wars Story, who was played by not Matthew McConaughey. Holy shit. I always confuse these two
Woody
guys.
Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson, thank you. Even though they look nothing alike, really. It's just that they play the same character every movie they're in. but regardless, this is all about him and his gang, and the gang, some of which, spoiler alerts, folks, but I'm sure if you're listening to this, you saw Solo already. Some of his gang, which is now dead as of Solo: A Star Wars Story. Of course, so is he. This all takes place a little bit before then, and you get mention of Dryden Voss. They were working for Dryden Voss at the time. You encounter Enfys Nest and everything. Yeah, so Star Wars Beckett, it's a little anthology series, whatever. But again, me personally, I didn't feel that this added anything. And in fact, the one story that I wanted that would have been interesting to read, and that you actually want the info from, is from a line from the movie Solo: Star Wars Story, which is where Lando says to Tobias Beckett, "You killed Aura Singh. You did me a big favor," and yep. We don't get that story. Like that would have been the comic I would have wanted to read was, yep. Okay, how did he kill Aura Singh, who of course is a bounty hunter character famous from the Clone Wars and Episode 1. Or like you see her for a second in Episode 1, but then she's a big deal in the Clone Wars with Boba Fett. So yeah, I mean, this just really felt pointless. Almost felt like the story from another quote unquote Man in Black, that being DJ from The Last Jedi. We got a one shot of him back in January, and that felt absolutely pointless and nothing, where it could have been something interesting, like maybe tell us something about the character. I didn't feel like this gave me much of anything. What were your thoughts on the comic book, Robin?
I agree with you that it was mostly pointless. I think maybe I liked it just a little bit more than you did. It certainly wasn't anywhere near as horrible as that awful DJ comic. Which
it wasn't that bad. You're right.
At the very least, it was faithful to the characters that we see in the movie. Whereas I think the DJ comic, I almost felt like I was reading a different story about a different character.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's fair. Yep.
And like you said, the art is anything but horrible. It's certainly far and above much better than the art, say, in the main Star Wars comic line, which I've panned every chance I get. But and I did to a degree enjoy the 3-act narrative structure. I thought that was kind of cool to do in a comic book. You don't see that very often.
Sure. Yeah. It was nice to have a little bit of an anthology like that. I mean, I don't have a problem that it was an anthology of that sort.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really the writing wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't what was needed. I don't know. It felt like you said.
Well, it wasn't necessary at all. Like the story that they told was really didn't add anything to our knowledge about these characters.
Right.
It was just and this seems to be the thing with all these Star Wars one shots is that they really don't they all are kind of pointless, because you had that Cassian and K2SO one shot, and it was pretty much the same thing as this. Yeah.
The only one I that I can think of that I actually liked was the Battle of Crate.
That was okay. Yeah.
That was okay. I mean, but
okay.
Because we were getting Leia, I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
Right.
But otherwise, no, I agree.
In fact, that it tied in with, both the Leia book and Episode 8.
Yes.
So it was kind of like a nice little in between those other two pieces. Right. But for the most part, Marvel's kind of striking out on all these one shots, and I almost kind of wish they had just stopped doing them.
Yeah, I mean, they really do, unfortunately, feel like very simple cash-in attempts with whatever movie happens to be coming out. And it just, I mean, they could mean something. Like I said, all they had to do is, okay, tell us the story about how he killed Aura Singh. And that'd be brilliant, and I'd want to read that and I want to know.
Right.
But that's not what they gave us at all. Not even anything close. It was interesting. Go ahead.
If they really wanted to, to sell comic books, do the story about how Kira and Maul met.
Right.
I mean, shit. Talk about characters we need more of.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be some interesting. I know. So they kind of sold this comic as a prequel to the Solo Star Wars story comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Series that'll run for what 5 or 6 issues, I suppose, starting in September. Now, like many of the comic book movie novels, or movie comic bookization that they've been doing, adaptations, thank you, yes, that they've been doing, they put in deleted scenes. Now apparently there will be a deleted scene where you find out that in the Solo comic book, or Solo Star Wars story comic book, you'll find out that Enfys Nest sells off gives all that energy that they get from Solo and Beckett and everybody at the end of the movie, gives it to Saw Gerrera.
Mm-hmm.
And you're actually going to see like an 11-year-old Jyn Erso. So that'll be interesting to have that kind of connective tissue. Again, I would have liked some more within this one. And even just seeing Aurra Sing again would have been cool. But
right.
Anyway, that's really my main critique with it. But I mean, it's not horrible at all, but it's also just really does feel pointless to me.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
So, all right, do you want to move on to our next bit of business?
Sure thing.
Oh yeah. All right. So this is, speaking of Aurra Sing, the first time we ever really see Aurra Sing, or, well, it's not the first time we see her, I suppose. She had a comic book and there was something else. But anyway, it was on Tatooine during the pod race scene in episode 1. So this kind of plays in nicely into that because, the headline for the story is Star Wars production designer confirms a spin-off movie featuring Tatooine was put on hold. Now, this is basically saying, I mean, this is a guy who has credibility within Lucasfilm. So I think that's why this was taken a little more seriously and made some news. And apparently there was some kind of a movie that was going to take place on Tatooine, ended up getting effectively put on hold. Not that it was canceled, but just that it was put on hold. So I'm going to ask you, Robin, do you think this was the Obi-Wan film?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether or not this is the Obi-Wan or the Boba Fett movie.
Ah, yes. Right. Yeah. Or like the part of that whole Underworld series.
Yeah.
Right? It looks like they're trying to.
Yeah. That was supposed to be a television series. So, I mean, I don't know. And they've said point blank that the TV show that, Jon Favreau is working on is not Underworld. So they still have all of those scripts and materials that Kathleen Kennedy says, they have plans to do something with it. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, when I say Underworld, I mean more like where it's going to be all the gangsters and
okay. Yeah.
Right. And Jabba the Hutt and everything, which we knew. Weren't they talking about a Jabba the Hutt movie at one point? I mean, of course, Tatooine would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of disappointing in the sense that I think Tatooine is like one of the richest planets to create more material with. There's still so much that's kind of like mysterious about it. I mean, one thing is like, the Tusken Raiders have always fascinated with me. And one of my favorite things from the EU was, those missions on Tatooine in Knights of the Old Republic, where you kind of infiltrate the Tusken Raiders and, start talking to them and getting the inside track on, what their history and society is like. So, I mean, that's kind of stuff I always like. And I just, maybe it's because I'm a hardcore Dune fan, but desert planets, there's something about desert planets.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And Tatooine is certainly one of the most notable and really well developed. I mean, it does have an entire ecosystem, crate dragons and, all these different things, banthas that you could encounter.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense it might have been the Obi-Wan film, but I don't know. I mean, because Ewan McGregor has come out and says, no, there's no real talks about that. I mean, but it all goes back and forth. And I'll tell you though, with the Sand People. Okay. So me, now there, you can find, I think actually it was in, I think it was called Star Wars Visionaries. Okay. Which was like this art collection. It was before Disney bought it, but it was this art collection that they did where a lot of different, they just got a bunch of different artists to do all these different interpretations of various things within Star Wars. And this is where some of the like famous kind of imperial art where it'd be like this really sexy woman in stormtrooper armor or in a TIE fighter pilot suit, and it says join the Empire and all this. That was actually part of the Star Wars Visionaries collection. In that collection though, there is this, and I think it is just so sexy, and such an awesome idea, where it's a Tusken Raider. It's a, it's kind of a centerfold here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two, and it's respectfully done. It's not done like those propaganda art pieces that I just mentioned. Okay. There is this, like, it shows the Tusken Raider, then it shows it starting to take its mask off. And when you get to the other side of the second page, it is just this beautiful woman, almost looks like Native American, kind of like face painting on and whatever, underneath that mask. And I always thought, I was like, man, that is so hot. Like, that'd be so amazing if they were just these ridiculously beautiful people underneath, underneath all of that garb, even though normally when we get it described, like, I think they're just something hideous. That's what, people generally say, or we have to deal with the character of Hor from Masters of Terraskasi, but who became a very famous character, believe it or not, in the old EU. So, but boy, that would have been awesome. Like, if they wanted to explore that, I would have been down, if they wanted to go more into, what the Tusken Raiders were like, what the Sand People were like.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, they could do a whole TV series that just takes place on Tatooine, and that'd be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you completely. They absolutely could have done, they can do that. And I mean, have it be on, it could be Mos Eisley, it could be Mos Espa. Like, I don't, take your pick.
Yeah.
They're both awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cover it all. So, I mean, I don't necessarily want an Owen Lars TV show, but
no,
I'll take something. Yeah. I'll take something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just so much going on in that planet and so much history there. I think they've even implied that, some of the history from the Old Republic game with like the Zerka Corporation is actually canon now. So like the Zerka Corporation is canon in the new Star Wars canon. And so whether or not they were the ones that originally came and sort of like colonized Tatooine, I don't know if that's still the backstory,
right.
But that I always thought that was really cool. That, that's where the Jawas got the sand crawlers, was these, ancient mining machines that were left over.
Yeah. Oh, see, these are the kinds of stories, man, like, stop doing these one shots and just give us some of this.
Right.
Because that would be so solid to see. And I'm also like on Naboo, like, you have those huge statues that you see in episode 1 all the time, which belongs to an ancient species that they called the Elders. At least this is what it was in the old EU. And like, they were a wildly advanced species, and nobody knows really a whole ton about them. Well, give us some fucking story. Like, it'd be great, I mean, because I think when we saw episode 1, we just thought that they were like some old Gungan shit, but no, it's actually representative of a whole other species that existed on Naboo.
I mean,
go ahead.
They've left so many hints throughout the, all of Star Wars about, how the universe is like really truly ancient, like ancient beyond ancient. One of my other favorite ones was, the end of Inferno Squadron, where they come across basically the cave of like ancient like droids or something from some leftover like ancient species that get reactivated.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was such a cool idea.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, well, that's part of Star Wars' appeal, is that it's the lived in universe, right? And everything's dirty, etc. And I would love to, anytime they want to go down those roads, they can. And it's a shame if, certainly the argument around this Tatooine movie being put on hold is because, well, Solo just so underperformed in their eyes that they're just going to concentrate on episode 9 and whatever else other shit that they're working on, already.
Which is unfortunate, because I think we both agree that that being the soul analysis is incomplete.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, any other movie in the world would love to have had that money. Know, and I mean, and it is, I think technically it is a rousing success. I mean, granted, I know it's an expensive film. Okay. But I don't know, I mean, another movie that the same thing kind of happened with, and originally this was considered like the most expensive movie ever made in history, was Cleopatra from 64 by, with Elizabeth Taylor and all that, because they literally had to film that movie twice. And it's argued to be the most expensive movie ever made. And I mean, very similar things happened with Solo. Cleopatra was kind of loved at the time, but now it's really considered by most people to just be this incredible masterpiece. Maybe Solo will get looked at kindly again
But
years
wasn't
down
he?
the line, just like Cleopatra was.
I think weren't they even disappointed by the box office returns on Cleopatra when it initially came out?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a full on bomb, but it was close enough that that the studios were like, we're never doing this kind of thing again.
Yeah, well, I mean, it had its problems because it's like a 4 hour movie, and
Right,
so they couldn't even have a lot of show times. So like it was hampered to make money because
right,
there,
right.
there weren't enough showings to make the money,
Yeah, it took what a good 30, 40 years before they started doing more movies like that, like Braveheart back in the
Yeah,
90s.
right. Yeah, exactly. And then of course we know, I mean, now most movies are picking up that slack. I mean, you got The Last
Hmm.
Jedi, it's a 3 hour goddamn film.
Right.
Pretty more or less, I mean, that's remarkable. So anyway, yeah, it's a shame that these kind of movies are getting put on hold because of all the richness that they could explore in the Star Wars universe. There's plenty to do it, and I'd love to have a movie for all of it. I mean, even if it's not like the greatest Star Wars movie ever, I don't really give a shit. I just want to, I want to see it. But that said, unless you have anything else to add on that, Robin.
No, I would just say, I mean, like my hope is that they're slowing down the pace, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea.
Agreed.
I think they do need to pace themselves a little bit more. So if these are things that they truly are putting on hold and not completely shelving, that's fine. If they are completely shelving it, then that of course that's disappointing. So I'm hoping that it's the former and that they're slowing things down and they're going to take their time with these things and hopefully do them right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, and I agree with all that. I mean, and I guess an area where the slack could get picked up, honestly, leads into our fan pick, or our fan production of the month, I should say, which is, well, it's kind of about fan films. That's actually what our question of the month is going to be about as well. Fan films can really pick up some of the slack if we don't get the stories, maybe that we want. And, the way that video production technologies have really been democratized, and they really have, you can have honestly, I think you can have a production that looks just as good as anything, that's being put in Hollywood, including by Disney and Lucasfilm. So, one of those side stories, and in fact, this is interesting. So this is from 2016, and I think it was put into production before like Rogue One. So the fan production of the month is actually my pick this month, and it's a fan film called Way to the Rebellion. Now you can find the link for it in the show notes, and you can watch it right on YouTube. It's only 13 minutes long. It's not long at all. But it's done by, what is it? Wei Feng Wong Fu Productions, which they've done all kinds of really great productions over the years. One of the interesting things in this is that I think it was very much ahead of the curve on a lot of things. First off, is that it is a story that takes place. I mean, and the production levels are phenomenal. Like, it really looks that good. In fact, even the music, it has an original soundtrack. In fact, that's kind of what brought my attention to the film a little while back, was that the soundtrack for this movie is actually Entrada, which is one of the major soundtrack release companies in the world. They actually released the soundtrack for this movie. So it's effectively, there's like this rare Star Wars soundtrack out there that you can get your hands on for this fan film, Way to the Rebellion. But it's a movie that takes place like during A New Hope, just before Alderaan is getting destroyed. And they kind of experience, like kind of an aftermath and what happens when Alderaan gets destroyed in it. So I think it's interesting. A lot of fan films, I'm starting to notice this as I kind of look back in the fan film catalog. I think Lucasfilm is kind of picking and choosing some things from some of these fan films and saying, whoa, these guys had a great idea and we're going to bake that in. Like, one of the interesting things in this is that because it's done by Wong Fu Productions, the lead characters are Asians. They're Asian men, which Star Wars wouldn't introduce officially until Kelly Marie Tran with The Last Jedi. And then also, we know in Star Wars Resistance, our main character of Kaz is also it's animated, but it is an Asian character. So fan films can really be well ahead of the curve as far as ideas and things to get injected into the Star Wars universe. And I thought this was just very well done. It's not like the most exciting thing because there's a lot of dialogue and not so much action, even though there is some action between kind of the lead characters who are sort of these explorers, and they take on like a stormtrooper outpost of sorts that's near Alderaan. And it works. I really liked this fan film a lot, and it's been a while since I've really enjoyed a fan film, even though I know now most fan films, because fan films have been happening for pretty much 20 years. In fact, you and I, Robin, we were talking before the show started, and we were saying, wow, it might actually be like this month, August 2018 might be like the 20-year anniversary for Star Wars fan films, like when that became a really big deal on the internet. And I think that, like this film, it feels really good. It feels really solid. And it's so remote in what happens, even though it's close to, the moment in A New Hope. I mean, it feels kind of like Rogue One in that sense, where you're getting kind of a prequel story to the Death Star and to, the destruction of Alderaan. It's so remote that, you could watch it and you could leave it in your head canon and just be fine with it. And those are the fan films I enjoy the most, are the ones that could possibly actually exist within the canon. And like, there's little chance that anything would get in the way of it. So I definitely recommend checking this out, Way to the Rebellion. I thought it was just very, very well done. And the score, like I said, I do have the soundtrack, and I thought that was well done as well. And just a lot to take in from that. So, Robin, I mean, how do you feel about Star Wars fan films overall? Like, I mean, this has been something that's been going on for 20 years. I mean, if you include like Hardware Wars or something, you could say it's been going on for 40. But, right. I think like what most people think of as Star Wars fan films, which were really the very first, I think very much the first fan films to ever take the internet by storm. And this is before YouTube was a thing, before any of that. Mm-hmm. We're talking the late 90s. Yep. Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about them overall, like their existence?
I mean, I know this is coming up as our question, but I mean, like the Troops film, actually the 10-year anniversary has already passed. It was, or 20 years. It was 1997.
97.
July 18th, the day before my birthday in 1997. Yeah, it's amazing.
That is amazing. So that's right around, not long after the special editions were in theaters.
Yeah. And I've just, that was the one that really opened my mind is that, the Troops. And my head exploded the first time I saw it, that the production values that fans could achieve with just, home video equipment, sort of semi-professional video equipment. And I mean, I've watched fan films ever since, and now it's a huge deal. Lucasfilm has a yearly fan film competition, and they show them off at Celebration, and they have a judge panel and everything.
Yeah. So Troops, to describe this. So actually, the question of the month for this Star Wars update in August 2018 is, what is the best Star Wars fan film? Obviously a very subjective thing. Troops is, that's kind of the first like big one, because, and it really I remember I watched Troops on Fox, like on network television, because it was that big of a deal that they put it there. It's effectively the show Cops, that people remember from the 90s, that I think is actually still running. It's in like its 35th season or something.
Right.
Unbelievably. Okay. But it's like the show Cops, except it's with stormtroopers. So they call it Troops, and you have them going around on Tatooine, and it's very funny, and it's very well done. It's brilliantly done.
Yeah. And they actually managed to, like, within it, explain a bit of unexplained, like Star Wars history and like what really happened at the Lars homestead.
Yeah,
the stormtroopers showed up.
Yeah, that was perfect. Yeah, I love Troops. I mean, it's like they had, I remember even back then they had, what do they call it? Atom Films. It's ATOM.
Yes.
Atom Films. They had like kind of a competition, as it were, for Star Wars fan films. And it was, at the time, it was kind of bullshit, because they wouldn't let you, like, it had to be kind of a parody. Like, they wouldn't let you do a serious Star Wars fan film, because at the time there were fan films and a couple of which I'm sure I'll mention, that, I think one could argue were almost better than episode 1.
Right.
At the
Well,
time.
back then, the legal question about how,
right,
how approved these were was, because Lucasfilm hadn't made an official announcement at that point that they were okay with this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So it had to be some sort of parody for them to avoid any sort of, legal backlash.
Right. So Troops won that Adam Films competition pretty handily because, I mean, it was parody in a way. And again, the production values were just phenomenal. It was just so well done. But just to say, like, just how big a deal this movie was, like, it's a totally valid answer for what is the best Star Wars fan film. I mean, it is the first, it is definitely the biggest, the most well-known, and arguably the most viewed ever, would certainly be Troops.
I mean, it's my favorite, but I'll admit there are some fan films that are definitely better than Troops.
Sure.
Troops hasn't even really aged that well,
right.
But I don't think I'll ever watch another Star Wars fan film that will have the kind of impact that Troops had on me at the time.
Yeah.
It was just that explosive and that eye-opening as to what was possible for fans to achieve, that'll never happen again. That was a one-time thing.
Sure. Yeah. And I can actually, again, I can completely understand that perspective. For me, now you got to understand, at the time, the biggest website on the internet, or for Star Wars on the internet, was not actually StarWars.com. In fact, I remember reading like an issue of PC Magazine, and it said like worst websites that should be great. And this is like from 1997 or 98. And it was StarWars.com was like number 4 as far as like one of the worst sites on the internet. And I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah. But it wasn't until after the success of the Force.net that Star Wars kind of realized that, hey, we need to have a presence online. I mean, you talk about, Disney taking cues from the fans. Lucasfilm did the same thing back in the day.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, you said it. That was the big Star Wars. That was the Star Wars site back in the late 90s. And even throughout the entire run of the prequels, really, was the Force.net. And this is where a lot of the Star Wars fan films were being hosted and where they resided. And the Force.net, I mean, there's an amazing story to tell around that, because they ended up getting a very cushy relationship with Rick McCallum. Who was producer for the prequels, and there was question as to how objective the Force.net was when it came to anything Star Wars, because they did get so tight.
I remember that
production team. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's where a lot of this was happening. And that's where you would find all of these fan films. And for a while, especially in the late 90s and even early aughts, I mean, it would be a big deal. Like, people would put out the trailer on the Force.net and it would just be this huge thing. Well, the movie that stuck out most for me, and I've talked about this back when I used to do the Star Wars update on my own on Patreon, but I mean, I cannot talk about this movie enough. And it was called Broken Allegiance, Star Wars Broken Allegiance. Yeah. And it was done by an Australian guy, actually done by an entirely Australian team, but the Australian guy, Nick Hallam, did it. In fact, it was so popular, he wrote an entire script for a sequel, but because of the legal landscape that was going on, like he couldn't produce it because nobody knew what to do. And he was kind of scared for his life in a way. And it's really sad. You can download the script for Broken Allegiance 2, and it's a damn fine script. But the movie Broken Allegiance was, for me, that was the first one, like where Troops was the one that kind of, opened up the whole can. Broken Allegiance was the first fan film I saw, and I dare argue it was the first fan film of this, where, okay, like fans can actually take on Star Wars, can take on George Lucas pound for pound. As far as story, maybe even to a degree production levels, and the effects are pretty fair, especially for the time, for the late 90s with this. And also it was like, and we got a female character in it, and she's like having this Force baby and everything. And they're like these 2 apprentices of Darth Vader, and Vader's in it. And the way that they presented Vader, I mean, like that, you never expected to like see a legit version of Vader in a fan film at that time. And they pulled it off. Also, it's another film where it had its own soundtrack. I mean, this was an event when this came out. Did not get the same amount of press or play as Troops, no doubt about that. But this was a really, really major event. And just, I think it's a very sexy story, to have, there's the character of Callus. The 2 main characters are Rowan and Callus. And personally, I keep it in my head canon because I think it was just so beautifully done. And it's only about 20 some odd minutes. But you get where Rowan, there's a point where he uses force lightning and everything, and all of it looks so good. It all looks so real. We got such great, awesome lightsaber battles that we weren't really getting out of what we wanted within Star Wars. I mean, it was just really, really cool. So I put Broken Allegiance at my top spot as far as like best fan film ever. And I still, for me personally, I still think that no other fan film, and there's been some beautiful ones. There was the Darth Maul Apprentice fan film that has something like 14 million views on YouTube. That was really well done. I don't think any of those, none of their stories match the power of the story that Nick Hallam wrote back in the day. So that stands tall for me. But do you have any honor? Go ahead.
I can't disagree with. I mean, like the production values on that one were really good too. In fact, I remember thinking, because this was I can't remember which came out first, but they had the Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, and they kind of had the live action sequences in that. I would say the stuff they had in there could have been a movie itself, and the production values on Broken Allegiance were on par or even above that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, which that was so cool when we got Kyle Katarn in the flesh.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. I think Broken Allegiance at many points kind of stood a cut above even that production, and that was done by LucasArts themselves.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely something to say. I mean, do you have any honorable mentions as far as other fan films that you think people should check out?
Not that I can think of. I mean, you mentioned the Maul one, which would be my other big pick. I really enjoyed that. Cool. Yeah. And of course, anytime somebody, there was I can't remember the name of it, but somebody, it was an Italian production, and they did a really big, long fan. It was really good. It was sort of like a Jedi Order fan film.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And if I can think of it again, I'll bring it up next time. But that was a really good production. So yeah, not even all the best fan films are even in English.
Right. Yeah. Good point. That's true. In fact, actually, the best Star Wars porn is in Swedish. So that's a fact. Like the company Private, that's the name of the company. They make like the best Star Wars porn ever, but it's not originally in English.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Darth Maul one I definitely recommend. I'll put links in the show notes for that. There was one that I used to love. If I think of it, I'll put a link in the show notes. It was called The Formula, and it wasn't actually a Star Wars fan film. It was more a film about Star Wars fans, but it was fictional. And I thought it was really cool. Like, I felt, me being a teenager at the time when it came out, and being, such a hardcore Star Wars fan, I felt like, holy shit, someone somewhere else knows exactly how I feel. And that really made it special for me. But it was called The Formula. And they did actually the entire team behind that, they were called Digital Llama. They did some very, very interesting things at the time. They were way ahead of the curve. They were doing podcasting before podcasts were a thing.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, I think those are the only few that I would really, bother to mention. Not that there hasn't been great work out there, but those are the ones that stand out where they look that good. And you're like, okay, no, this could sit in my head canon if I wanted it to. And, it's funny, like it used to be hilarious because it was actually, it became kind of a meme where like every Star Wars fan film took place on a forest planet, right? Because it's the easiest thing to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've certainly gotten beyond that in some points with these fan films, thankfully. But anyway, if it ends up on a forest, well, whatever. Who gives a shit? So yeah, I love fan films. I think they're still very important things to have out there and to get produced. And maybe they can tell the stories that Disney's never going to want to bother, to do. So
I will say this. This is the one area that Star Wars has been way ahead in Star Trek in, is the way that they treat fan films.
Great point to bring up, because Star Trek treats fan films like shit. They're ready to take you to court in a heartbeat if you do anything over 15 minutes, and if there's anything crass in it, you are done. Yep. We know the story of Axanar.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And there have been straight up, half hour, hour long fan films. So. Yeah. and Lucasfilm doesn't bat an eye. And one of the things that a lot of people were worried about when Disney took over, that policy was changed. That policy was going to change. And thankfully, they came out and said, no, everything's fine, guys. We're still going to do the Fan Film Awards. You guys can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if George Lucas made that a stipulation.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, because and it only made sense that Lucas would have that stance because he's as indie filmmaker as you can get. Like It would be downright insulting if he's told these people, no, you can't do that, because he played that ball, when he was a young man.
Right. Well, yeah, because he literally he was going to make Flash Gordon instead of Star Wars if he had the rights to the property. So which, wow, what a world we'd be in right now. Right.
I don't even know. And it's sad too, because and I think about this because I love the original Flash Gordon with Buster Crabbe. But the 1980 Flash Gordon film is, in my opinion, I mean, it's hokey, but it's a masterpiece. And I want the world where both of those exist, as exciting as a George Lucas Flash Gordon film probably would have been. I'm glad history turned out the way it did, because not just for Star Wars, but for the Flash Gordon movie that we got.
Well, I mean, how cool was it when, Max von Sydow showed up in Episode 7?
Perfect.
And to have that connection between Flash Gordon and Star Wars now, that was cool.
Yeah, and just have Emperor Ming there. I even think he was wearing the ring. I don't know. Yeah. Where's Dale Arden? I'm going to give her an orgasm. I mean, that's pretty much about where I was going to go. That's a great point. I mean, I thought about that, but I've never given that too much thought. But yeah, that is a nice full circle for that to go. Brilliant. Yeah. So. Well, anyway, I think that does it for our topics this month. Of course, any of the fan films we mentioned, anything we mentioned during the show, the links are in the show notes. And like you said earlier in the show, Robin, I mean, you're feeling kind of low energy, but positive about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, I think right. We're kind of got the quiet before the storm. I think, it's not going to be too long before Resistance hits.
Yep.
And they haven't announced a time period on the new season of Clone Wars, but I have to imagine it's got to be, before the end of the year or early next year.
Yeah, it'll probably be 2019, because that's when the Disney streaming service is supposed to start.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
no, because I thought Resistance was supposed to be on the Disney streaming service too, wasn't it?
I think that's on XD.
Okay, well, maybe I was wrong about that. But yeah, I mean, this stuff it's coming up pretty soon. So,
yeah, it is all rolling out fast.
We have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Next month, certainly we'll, I'll at least do a review of the solo Star Wars story novel. That'll be interesting to look into that. Also, we'll have the end of the Poe Dameron series, which I think we should probably review then as well. Yeah, and again, a lot of productions coming out. New Clone Wars, Resistance, and Episode 9 is going to pick up steam. I'm getting a feeling. I'm thinking like Thanksgiving, we're actually going to get a trailer for Episode 9. Because
you think so?
Rumor is that production will be done around February 2019.
Okay.
So I think J.J. Abrams and J.J. Abrams alone would have enough at that point to be able to do that. If not, do it with Mary Poppins at Christmas. When that comes out.
Okay.
That's kind of my feeling.
You're talking more like a teaser.
Yeah, something like he did with The Force Awakens, which that's enough.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of needed, because we gotta start healing from the wounds of The Last Jedi pretty fast.
Yeah.
A trailer for Episode 9 is about the only thing I think that could do that.
Right.
Yeah, other than Clone Wars. I mean, that was the greatest fucking announcement that could ever be made.
I mean, that's just as long as I have that, I mean, I'm happy. I'm just like, even if that was the only thing going on in Stars right now, I'd still be happy. Obviously, I'd want more, but if that was the only thing, I would be content.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. So we're both feeling pretty positive. Good things are coming down the pike, and certainly we're going to be covering all of them on the Star Wars update. So, Robin, thanks again, man. Of course, I always love doing this every month.
Absolutely. It's my favorite time of the month.
Hell yeah, baby. So, all right, everyone, a lot more shows to come out this month, actually, believe it or not. There's going to be pretty much an episode every day coming out on Patreon, at least. So I will see all of you on the other side.